Let's go ahead and get started.
I feel like I'm just so tired of just stick yourself every day. Let's get easier.
Snow, man.
Am I doing this now? I'm looking south, west out. All right. Here.
And they're all in there.
Thanks. I got this for $3. Just like my future. The third store.
What, you sing the Rip Chap song?
What?
You sing the Rip Chap song after you bought it?
All right. Amendment number 5. Let's talk about it real quick before we move on and start tackling number 6.
We got to one point. I'm writing it down. Guaranteed.
No, you're not counting this time, right?
Right.
All right. So then we'll go through 5 real quick then. No one can be tried for a serious crime unless the grand jury has decided there's enough evidence. Perfect example. So the example, Caitlin didn't get to hear this example, so I'll give you a lowdown, okay? Guy's accused of murder. He owns the house. Girlfriend lives there in the house but doesn't own it. Gives police permission to search it. They find a gun and clothes covered in the victim's blood. Since the girlfriend doesn't live there, the search was illegal. The guy got off. And they didn't have enough evidence to actually put him on trial.
Did she leave him?
Kind
I
of.
would have left him for
That I don't know. I do not know. All right, a person who's found innocent of the crime cannot be tried for the same crime again. Somebody give me an example of this.
Casey Anthony.
Casey Anthony's one. O.J. Simpson's another one. There are a few others. Huh? For some reason, he's all the way up. That's still all right, no one can be forced to testify against themselves. Why? Say it, Kayla. It's a lose-lose situation, right? Yeah, because if you're guilty and you go out there, you just incriminated yourself. So you're probably going to lie. Guess what? You just committed perjury, right? The only situation that could be good is you go up there and you didn't commit the crime and you're telling the truth, right? So for this reason, because there are more losing situations than winning situations, you can't be forced to try or stay in trial on your own case. You can, though. You do have the option. And eminent domain. What's eminent domain? Yeah, the government can take your property as long as they give you what? Just compensation, meaning they give you an amount of money of what your property is worth. All right? And then we watched a real sweet late 90s video. And then we moved on to amendment number 6. Guarantees individuals the right to defend themselves in a court trial. Why would we want this right? How many of you, if you got in trouble and you were on trial, would much rather just sit in your room until it was over and not deal with it? Kind of like a deal. Maybe. Not how it works, though, right? So why would you want the ability to defend yourselves in a court trial or have a lawyer do it for you?
Because you might not know the law like we do.
Because they can what?
You
Because they can what, Kate? Are you answering the question? Okay.
You won't get as much trouble.
It's so like if a prosecuting attorney has a way with words, he's very charismatic, he can persuade people and do all kinds of things. This prevents the judge from saying, hey, I've heard all I need to hear, you're guilty. We don't want to hear from you. Okay? This guarantees you the right to defend yourself and say, hey, I didn't do this, and here's why. This is what I was doing, and this is where I was. Or having a lawyer do it for you. Now, do I need to say this? Always get a lawyer. Never defend yourself.
My boyfriend did
It
one
is
thing.
always worth the money. Always. Because even if you're innocent, if you look on YouTube, there are thousands of video clips of innocent people being asked questions by lawyers. And they're answering truthfully. But the way the question is worded makes you seem like you're guilty. Right? Like, What did you do prior to taking a job here while I was unemployed? Oh, you didn't have any income. They're trying to paint a picture, make you seem like a bad person by using things that have happened in your past. Okay? So always be careful, always get a lawyer. Guarantees right to speedy public trial by an impartial jury. This is new stuff, right? We did write that down.
Are you sure? Is that right?
That's all right, go ahead and get it down then. Guarantees the right to speedy public trial. Why do we want the trial to be public? Why do we want anybody in the public to be able to attend?
To make it not biased.
The impartial part is the bias part. So why do we want it to be in public? Why can anybody off the street walk into a courthouse and watch a trial? How many of you would like maybe a private trial where nobody's allowed in the room? It's you, your attorney, the prosecuting attorney, and the judge. What can happen there? See what I'm saying, Mac? Go with it. What am I saying?
Well, if you're in a courtroom and nobody else is there to witness what the verdict is, then who's there to defend you?
There you go.
It's unjust.
If it's public, if people can go there, there's no shady backdoor things that are going to happen because everything has to happen out in the open. People can attend. It's sort of a safeguard for you. Like, hey, this is happening in public. This didn't happen behind closed doors. All right, anything like that. Speedy trial. How many of you think all the trials that happen in the United States are speedy? Raise your hand. How many of you would say those are speedy if I tell you that Nelson Mandela was held for 20 years before he was tried and found not guilty? 3 years is pretty quick, right? Average turnaround rate on major crime. It's pretty speedy. Yeah, you have a question?
Do they compensate him for his 20 years of his life?
No.
Yeah, hey, how do they hold you for 20 years if it's?
It's in South Africa. South Africa. Different state. Yeah. So in the United States, it is pretty speedy in terms of other countries throughout the world. And the reason it has to be speedy is so they can't hold you for 20 years or 50 years or your entire life before you ever go to trial. Okay, so they have to ensure that it keeps moving, that it's always going forward. All right? And an impartial jury. What does impartial mean? So,
Can't have like all girls.
the demographic part of it's sort of by chance. You're sort of selected at random. Yeah, unbiased. So like, all right, big, huge case everybody heard of. George Zimmerman, right? George Zimmerman versus the state of Florida. They had an incredibly hard time finding impartial jury members because that was such a nationwide case that people had already started to form opinions before they ever went into the courtroom. So it took them a really long time to find jurors who either didn't know who George Zimmerman was, hadn't heard anything about the case or anything like that.
Yeah, we
George Zimmerman, he shot Trayvon Martin. The court ruled it was in self-defense. It wasn't the cause of it, but it was sort of the first of many shootings of like police officers. It was about 3 years ago now, 4 years ago almost. Yeah.
You're hearing stuff about the whole Grammy nomination stuff, Will Smith and all these new people.
Yeah, you're talking about the Oscars.
Oscars, yeah.
What about
What about the NBA? I watched the video of this dude. He was like, how many white people were in the nominations for best on the court in the NBA last year? None. How about this year? Probably none.
It has to do with percentages. I mean, I think the NBA is made up of like 89 or 90% African Americans. So,
Well, look at
89 to 90% of the time, statistics are going to say that someone of color is going to win that MVP. Vice versa for movies.
Right.
It's something like lead actors in movies, like 75 to 80% of the time, are white. So it all has to do with numbers. And of course, you can take a situation, skew it, turn it, do whatever you want with it, and spin it however you want. But there's no way you can prove that one way or the other it's being done on purpose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I have heard about that.
I live under a rock apparently.
Yeah. So how many of you would be pretty mad if you had somebody on a jury trial that maybe you've always hated or disliked?
Oh, yeah.
Right? It would suck, especially since, like, if it's you broke a county law and you're on trial in that county, they pull people from the county. It's not people from Florida coming to Ohio to try a case in Clark County. It's people from Clark County are on a jury for trials in Clark County. So the odds of getting somebody are a lot better than you would think. So they do this by a screening process.
Wait,
They ask X amount of questions and certain types of questions, and if any of the markers come up, any red flags, or if they have any associations with a group that is also in the trial or the case or whatever, they'll throw them out. Okay? And they'll do that. Anybody know what you have to do as a juror? If you're a juror, if you're somebody that's sitting and deciding whether somebody's guilty or not, you're not allowed to live at your house. You're not allowed to be at your home. So the case is over,
Yeah, so it's over.
however long it takes. Say hotel, you have limited access to television. You're not allowed to watch any news. You're not allowed to take in any information because they don't want any new evidence contaminating your opinion. Only the evidence that's allowed to be
How
recorded.
do they control whether you go home or not?
They put you up in a hotel.
Are they gonna pay for it? Okay.
They pay for it.
Start giving you a nice one. What like for years?
Huh?
What if it's for like 3 years?
That's how long it takes. Nothing's ever taken 3 years. There's some that have taken like 45 days. The trial itself is usually. Like the George Zimmerman trial, I think it was 37 days. You're only allowed to talk to your loved ones face to face, under supervision. You're only allowed to talk on the phone with somebody listening. It's a pretty serious process.
Can you deny being a juror?
It depends.
Well, I'm denying.
Do you have, like, a job is not a good enough reason. Legally, your job has to pay you and they can't fire you
Alright, that's awesome.
because it's a public duty. So there are only certain things that, like, if you're a single parent, or you would get paid from your job, and you do get some sort of stipend, depending on how long it takes. Like they give you X amount of dollars for food.
So they don't pay you to be a juror?
They can, but most times no.
No, I don't want to be.
You don't get a choice.
You get it in the mail.
You get a letter in the mail saying, hey, come here on this day.
Isn't that only if you're like registered to vote or something?
In some states, in Ohio, yeah. So if you're not registered to vote, you will get called for jury.
So like,
But
you
if
just
you're not
get
registered
like
to vote, you can't vote.
a random letter to be like, you're a juror now.
Yeah, like, hey, you're being called to be a juror for this case.
Oh.
Like when I was in high school, I had a teacher who got called for jury duty. She was gone for 4 weeks. We came back.
That would suck though. Think I'm a single parent.
If you're a single parent's one of the number one ways that people get out of it.
Yep.
Because they don't have another secondary carrier. All right, so this is the one we've been talking about. So authorities cannot hold an individual unnecessarily a long time awaiting trial. They can't just hold you forever, years and years and years. But the other one's pretty interesting if you think about it. Prevents government from silencing critics by holding them for years without trial. So let's say someone said something that the federal government didn't like. If Amendment 6 didn't exist, they could just hold them for as long as they wanted to, which is sort of what happened to Nelson Mandela. He spoke out against a brutal dictatorship, and the government said, hey, we're going to hold you. Anybody know any countries today that practice this? They hold people that speak out against them?
People that
Russia.
are in
North
Korea.
Korea.
There's so
North Korea
many-
usually kills them, but
Well, there's so many, like, held there now.
China,
No,
Iran.
Korea or something like that.
We just got a bunch of hostages from Iran, a bunch of
Um,
prisoners.
It was on the news today. Like,
Syria.
this dude talked he was in Korea or someplace like that,
North Korea.
North Korea, whatever it is, and he said something, broke some type of law down there, and now he's held hostage.
Speaking out against the government is a capital offense in North Korea. So anybody ever read or seen the Hunger Games movies? You know those public executions happen every day. Every single day. They don't have the Hunger Games as far as I know, but they publicly televise those things.
As a religious, like God, like they have
Yeah.
a picture, or they have that.
It has a picture.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of a pseudo-religion type thing where they sort of worship the leader, whoever's leading at the time. Only like 5% of North Korea's population is allowed to have access to the internet. And those 5% are severely, like China, everybody has access to the internet, but the government censors things. They don't let them have access to certain things. Or if they speak out against the government, they can just say, hey, you spoke out against the government, you're going to jail for 5 years. Yeah. Pretty interesting, right? Gives the accused the right to a change of venue when unfavorable publicity arises. Again, we'll bring up George Zimmerman. How many of you know that his case was moved 3 times? They moved it from one place to another because his original trial was supposed to occur in a courthouse that was very close to where Trayvon Martin lived. And he said that unfair publicity, that sort of skewed opinion, is going to affect his ability to get a fair trial, so they moved him. And then they moved it to a predominantly all-white neighborhood, and Trayvon Martin's lawyers, the lawyers in the state, said, hey, this isn't fair. So eventually they found a place that they both deemed was pretty fair, and a trial there. So you have the right, if you think that wherever the trial is happening is going to affect your ability to have a fair case, then you can have it moved. And this is a big one as well. The Sixth Amendment also guarantees the person that is accused of the crime to know the charges that are being brought against them. So they can't just say, hey, we're going to hold you in jail for a while. They have to tell you why they're holding you in jail or why you're standing trial. Sixth Amendment actually prevents a lot of corruption. Prevents a lot of sort of shady backdoor deals between judges and lawyers and maybe wealthy businessmen that want to pay off those judges or lawyers. Any questions over 6? I think you guys would be surprised how fast the last 4 amendments go. Because they're all pretty short and they all are pretty specific. All right, so any questions on amendments 1 through 6? All right, amendment number 7. This is not a joke. This is a real amendment. Gives right to a jury trial in federal courts to settle all disputes worth property more than $20. That $20 is not an arbitrary number. The Constitution says $20. I just always thought it was funny that it said $20. Why $20? We talked about it a little bit.
$20 is a lot of money.
Section. $20 was a good deal of money back when the Constitution was being written in 1787, but $20. Sure. Absolutely. How many of you know how much these textbooks cost a piece? Like $160 when we bought them a piece. And that was with the discount because we bought so many of them. Right? So this textbook, you took it from the school and didn't return it, take you to federal court. And we have a right to have a jury decide it. Meaning a judge isn't gonna say, oh, I believe you. You're gonna call jurors, just like we just talked about. They're gonna stay in a hotel, and they're gonna listen to this case over a textbook. Because the Seventh Amendment guarantees you that right.
Could be like,
Right?
maybe like a murder case where I'm not.
It could be all kinds of stuff. There are phone cases that are worth $20 that you can take someone to federal court over. There was a sort of a funny case. I remember this when I was in high school. It was in 2007, and there was a one couple that lived next door to another couple, and they wanted to build a fence. And the agreement was they would each pay for half of the fence. So they do that. The fence gets built. Well, the guy that initiated it made the gate open towards his neighbor's house. His neighbor said, I don't like that. It should swing both ways. The guy said, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, eventually they came to an agreement that the guy would pay for the hinges, and then once the work was done, the other guy would pay for the work to do. Does that make sense? So one guy's paying for labor, one guy's paying for parts. The bill for labor was $27.83. The one neighbor refused to pay it. So the other neighbor paid it for him, and took him to federal court for it. And he won, actually. Because in the state of Ohio, any spoken agreement is legally binding. So if you say it and you can prove that it was said, it's a
How do you
legally binding
You
document.
can prove it if it's verbally said.
If it's, you can record it, or if someone else is there to hear it, if there's a witness.
So if you don't have that, you're just screwed.
Right. So if I took this lid to the cereal container and I wrote on it, I will do blank in exchange for whatever, I sign it, the other person signs it, that's now a legal binding contract in Ohio. Simple as that. A napkin has been submitted to evidence 1,000 times for Craigslist cases. Yeah. Happens all the time. If it's not signed, we don't know who agreed to it. That means just somebody could have just written down on a piece of paper. So you gotta sign it to make it legally binding. Now, if both parties agree, they can bypass the jury and just have a judge decide. This would be things like Judge Judy, Judge Joe Brown, all right? Those types of court cases, because they're not, nobody's going to jail, they're already going to go for money. Yes. A lot of people do it. They usually find the cases where they know the people are going to be pretty striking, and they say, "Here's some money to appear on TV." Argue, as I don't want to say stupidly as possible. But
That's
what it seems like.
ridiculously.
Ridiculously as possible. Be as boisterous and loud and big as you possibly can. But yeah, what happens there is legal. Absolutely. Sometimes. But you're not under oath in civil court. That's the difference.
She did bring card and she's like, well, I paid $200. Why did they want $100? Okay, why did they roll?
I love it when people come in and say, oh, I paid $1,000 and I paid $500. Do you have any proof of it? No. I don't care. Gotta prove. Gotta bring proof. That's it for 7. 8's pretty to the point as well. 8 bans cruel and unusual punishment.
Why don't people get weird punishments back in the day?
Yeah, and did you know that when you're in jail, you are allowed to work? You're allowed to do things. Generally, it's things like food and laundry and different things. Low security facilities, high security facilities, they're not allowed to do anything. Did you know that it was deemed unconstitutional, in violation of the 8th Amendment, to force them to work without paying them, even if they were prisoners? The wage is anywhere between 12 to 28 cents in Ohio, an hour.
My stepdad, when he was.
And that money goes to their
Was it
commissary.
He said like the cheese in there didn't melt, it just kind of burned.
Weird. It's probably, a lot of people don't know this, but like American cheese is very close chemically to plastic.
Yeah.
Extremely close.
Velveeta is too, it's like one molecule.
Yeah, margarine's very close.
I hate Velveeta.
So, Eighth Amendment bans cruel and unusual punishment. So according to the United States, it is cruel and unusual to force somebody to work when they're incarcerated. They equated it to slavery.
So if they don't wanna work, they don't have to.
Correct. But if they do work, they have to be paid for it. No matter what. It also prevents excessive bail. So let's say, jaywalking, okay? Dilly.
We did that.
Let's say
That's funny.
you go to the court and they hold you on bail of $100 million, right? Is that gonna be excessive?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably, depending on your record, unless you have attempted murder or something on your record. That's gonna be pretty excessive.
Yeah, because they put that on the shelf, don't they?
So- Generally, they're not gonna hold you for jaywalking, they're just gonna write you a ticket, all right?
How
Or
about
like
the ticket?
OVI, I don't know. OVI, which is what DUI is called now. They could hold you there and usually bail somewhere like $1,000 for that.
We don't do walk.
So what's your question, Mac?
So they have the right to raise your bail, but like if you're on trial for murder, they don't know if you did it or not, you're still considered innocent, they have the right to raise your bail, right? You've been through multiple sessions in court.
So like if
Like the one guy.
you get sentenced, or if you are set bail at a certain amount, you pay bail, and then you're out on bail, and you commit another crime, or you run away, now you're a flight risk, now they can hold you without bail, or they can raise your bail exponentially. But if you go out on bail, you show up for all your trial, you do all your stuff, and then at the end of it, you're proven not guilty, or you're proven guilty, as long as you show up, you get all your money back from bail.
No, but I mean like somebody that's on trial for murder, and there's multiple sessions in court, they're still ruling it, taking the hands on it. Like I was watching a case where they.
You mean that-
250 to 500.
There has to be a reason, they have to prove it, but yeah, sure.
Crazy.
Who decides how much your bail is?
Usually a judge,
Then who decides if it's like excessive?
court. If you think it's excessive, you bring it to the court, the Supreme Court will determine. So this is gonna answer your question a little bit. Judge sets bail in an amount that ensures the accused will attend court, and when the trial ends, bail's returned. No,
As long as you don't show.
even if you're proven guilty, as long as you don't run away. As long as you show up every time, whoever posted bail is gonna get it back. You have a question, Daniel? So, if bail's $1,000, you pay your own bail of $1,000. If you show up for your trial every time that you're supposed to, whether you're proven guilty or not guilty, the court has to return your $1,000. It's not a fee. So there's also something called bond, generally where you pay 10% of whatever the bail cost is. You can't post bond for yourself. Someone else has to do it for you, and they have to take full responsibility for you. So if you were to run away, you owe them the other 90%, and you forfeit it. And the person is still gonna have an arrest warrant, they're gonna go bring it. So, rule of thumb, don't post bond for anyone.
Why?
Because you have no control over what they do, but you're responsible for it. Yes, if they run away, it's on you.
So what happens with if nobody like helps them out with that?
They stay in jail
Oh, okay.
until the trial's over.
I know there's like bail bonds.
Yeah. Now, here's something, A lot of people don't know. But the judge cannot require poor individuals to work off fines with longer sentences. So they can't say, oh, I can't afford these fines. Oh, well, you'll just stay in jail longer and you'll work off whatever the fines cost,
So you're not getting paid, you're just paying for that.
pretty much. Yeah. Usually short-term prisoners, people that are gonna get out, they're charged a fee for being there every day. And they have to pay that back when they get out. So once they have a job and they're paying taxes, the government takes a portion of it to pay back their fees that they accumulated while they were in prison. But if they never get a legal job, you know,
In its own way.
you can't hunt them down, right? How many think this is a good thing? Because what would happen if we could require poor individuals who couldn't afford fines to just work off their fine?
It probably costs us more money to make them pay it off. In respect.
Economically speaking, yes. But let's think socially.
Well, it looks
What
better.
are going to happen? Poor individuals are more likely to be in jail than people that aren't poor. Doesn't seem really fair, right? So it's there to prevent people from being in jail just because they're poor. Because it's not a crime to be poor. It's not very fun, but it's not a crime. Okay? Any questions over 7 and 8? We're going to fly through 9 and 10. Amendment 9. So we've went through the Constitution, we talked about the preamble, we talked about the Articles 1 through 7, how it outlined the legislative branch and the powers that they have, the executive branch, the powers they have, the judicial, the powers that they have. What Amendment 9 is saying is that states and the people have all the rights unless they are explicitly given to the federal government. So here's what the Constitution says in number 9. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So again, I'll explain it one more time. The rights that they are not given in the Constitution, the rights that the Constitution doesn't even talk about, we have. The people retain those rights. And the reason for this existing is because it prevents the government from claiming that the only rights possessed by the people are those listed in the Bill of Rights. So, for example, if this didn't exist, if Amendment number 9 didn't exist, and the government came and said, you only possess the rights to free speech, religion, press, assembly, bear arms, you don't possess the right to go to school. You don't possess the right to drive. You don't possess the right to walk at night. Okay? All those stupid little things that you're allowed to do. Number 9 says the government can't take away any of the rights that you weren't given if you're under 18.
If your town has a curfew.
It's not.
For some towns, they curfew.
So does everybody understand what this is saying
Eden has curfew.
for people that are underage?
Yeah.
So, let me explain that one more time, because this can be hard to understand. This is saying that the people have all the rights that the Constitution doesn't give them. Does that make sense? So we retain all the rights even if we weren't given those rights. Okay? And this is to prevent the government from coming in and saying, hey, those are the only rights you have, everything else is ours. All right, so this is sort of a check on the government. And Amendment 10. Any and all powers not given to the federal government are given to the states or the people. Which means Go back to Article 1, 2, and 3. They say this is their responsibility, this is what they can do. Anything other than that, anything that is not explicitly included in those sections, goes to the state governments. The state governments have responsibility. For example, nowhere in the Constitution does it say that we have a federal drinking age, right? So who's in charge of setting the drinking age? The states. So if the federal government doesn't have the power to make a law over it, or have power over it, it goes to the states.
Is there any state that's like less than 21?
Nebraska was the last one to change it in 1998. But they're all 21 now. Does anybody know why they're all 21? I think I explained this way back.
Oh, they make suggestion.
Yeah, basically the federal government said, hey, all you states, here's a couple $1 million, but you can only have it if your drinking age is 21. And it was to like build new roads and maintain roads. So the states, basically, if they wanted this federal funding, had to change their drinking age. So that's the federal government sort of affecting. They're a lot better than they used to be. Like highways haven't existed. Highways have only existed for like 30 or 40 years.
I hate going on a highway because there's
Like
just so much
interstate.
trash, man. It saddens my soul. I can't just pull over because if I could.
Until 1999 or 2000, the speed limit on interstates was 55 nationwide.
That's
I like going in Mexico, it's like so.
Texas, it is 85.
There's
There's
this,
this-
there's this,
Something.
there's this Oklahoma.
All right, hold on. Any questions over Amendment 9 and 10? They're pretty straightforward, but they can be sort of difficult to understand. All right? So, if the federal government doesn't have the power, it goes to the states. If the Constitution doesn't give you the right, you have the right.
You know that road in Germany that doesn't come up?
Yeah, I'm on. You're still driving. We're driving right. See you. Have a good weekend. Sorry, you
Oh, which, I had a note.
That's right.
Like, I thought this was.